the hiring process that we've always known, 3 to 4 stages, 2 to 3 months, is going to be radically transformed over the next 2 to 4 years. And it is still early enough for recruiters to start.
Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk about the future of TA today. You spend a lot of time on workforce transformation, particularly through the lens of TA, right? Former global head of talent at Dyson. We want to make this as practical as possible, which might be difficult when talking about things in the future. But first, set the scene for us. Why do you think now is the time recruiters need to start thinking about really upskilling themselves for the years to come?
Yeah, great question. The way that I look at this is that there will never be a quieter moment for recruiters to start upskilling for the future. And in many respects, we used to talk about the future of recruiting, and it felt like a far out thing that you could point at and wait for. Whereas today, at least for me and what I see, it feels like that future has been pulled forward, and we're all waiting to see where various different things land. So I spend a lot of time trying to think about what is happening, what has happened, what will happen next, the implications of that on companies and on managers, but most importantly for recruiters. And probably worth me setting my stall out in a sense. I think that the hiring process that we've always known, 3 to 4 stages, 2 to 3 months, is going to be radically transformed over the next 2 to 4 years. And it is still early enough for recruiters to start preparing for what that's going to look like and go on that journey as it happens, as opposed to succumbing to the kind of the results of that new world that we're going to walk into.
Nice. Let's talk about products and tech first then. It feels like every day there's like 100 new technologies in the market right now. There's a guy called Glenn who's a talent director in the US, and he makes this map of all the different tools, and he's literally updating it weekly, and it's just expanding and expanding.
You can't start that type of thing anymore. It's just too big.
Yeah, you can't even read it on LinkedIn now. It's so blurry. There's so many. But yeah, specifically then on tech and products, how can you keep up with the pace of change, and what do you advise recruiters to do there?
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the topic of tools and tech and product can feel really overwhelming, and it's extremely noisy, and it's really tough for recruiters because let's say the majority don't feel like it's necessarily their role to lean into the topic of tech, product and systems. Or they think that perhaps the company that they work at isn't quite at the forefront of that technology innovation. Or they got into recruitment not for a passion of tech and product, but of the exact opposite, of kind of the people and the experience side of things. But there are a few things that I would be doing today if I was in a talent acquisition team thinking about this. Number one, I think, is get close to your tech stack, even if it's nothing to do with you. And by that, I mean asking your manager if you can spend time almost as a product owner, a part-time product owner of the ATS or the CRM internally, or if you have a systems manager, and that's perhaps not as straightforward, asking to shadow that person and be kind of the point of contact for the rest of the team. And you can set up kind of internal projects, such as, consolidating tips and tricks for peers, asking vendors for their tips and tricks as well. If that's not possible, you can also just research the tech providers' roadmaps that you have. So most of them are online. You can even get in touch with those companies, and you'll very quickly hear about incoming features with dates, and that allows you to essentially preempt the impact that those features are going to have on your role and come up with the ideas that your team and your manager are going to want to hear. I also think like separate benefit to doing that is it just reduces kind of your anxiety around, how is your 9-to-5 job, your career going to be transformed in the next couple of years. Similar point, but I think just dabbling in the world of AI, which is a highly fatiguing topic for everybody. But most leaders and recruiters are all in the same boat in that they have roughly the same exposure to AI, the same understanding. So you can quite quickly become kind of a point of knowledge for the rest of the team through kind of very little kind of testing and experimenting. So yeah, no matter how busy you are as a recruiter, I think it's extremely wise to start spending a bit of time on the weekend to just start playing with some of the broader technologies that are now emerging.
I like the advice of, if you can become like the product owner for one particular technology or tool in your company, and we look at transferable skills. If you want to protect yourself for like having to move roles more often, which is what we're seeing in TA, right? Before you would look at, I've got experience hiring software engineers or go-to-market roles, and like that's still relevant. But also, if you're an expert on MetaView and can either implement that or drive best practice in your new company, that's a new skill for the CV, which we probably haven't seen. This podcast is brought to you by the Recruiting Wisdom newsletter. Every week, Recruiting Wisdom shares practical tips, tricks, and hacks directly from global talent acquisition leaders, helping you become a better recruiter in 10 minutes or less. Recruiting Wisdom is completely free to join, but the only way to receive every issue is to join the email list. The link is in the description below. Let's talk about efficiency, and you spoke about AI there as maybe part of that, but efficiency is definitely a big focus for TA teams of all sizes, and I'm sure you're seeing this. Is efficiency a skill, or how can recruiters get better at the concept of efficiency?
Okay, yeah. I think going to go on a bit of a long-winded answer here, and the way you asked the question, I think you probably share a similar view. I think it's really difficult for recruiters to specifically upskill on efficiency in their day-to-day job. Recruiters are often working extremely hard and efficiently within constraints such as a tech system, HR processes that they're governed by, or they inherit restrictions on their efficiency, which could be candidates' speed to return on comms, hiring manager availability, or on feedback. So generally, whilst recruiters are really good at execution and is what often makes them successful at what they do, a lot of the time the efficiency is something that can't be controlled, and you have to maximize what it is that you do control. And one point that I often come back to is, and we might have had this conversation about 6 months ago, being strategic within talent acquisition is essentially about making decisions that improve the speed, quality, or diversity of hires. One of those three things is speed. So you could argue is efficiency. And I think there's a bit of a misnomer that the more senior you become in talent acquisition, the more opportunity you have to improve efficiencies. And I'd argue, having been through that journey, the opposite is true. I think recruiters have this extremely valuable vantage point where they can spot the connection between a process and a tool and an experience and a bottleneck and resolve it. But I think the skill that we often lack is the kind of the self-control to stop, identify it, write it down, share it, tell your manager, and to kind of flex that muscle beyond the critical metrics that you're trying to adhere to all the time. So it's a really hard thing, I think, for recruiters to put time into things that don't feel that they directly benefit them in their kind of here and now. But as we move into this new kind of era, having that curiosity and that creative problem solving, thinking about efficiencies is going to be what sets recruiters apart from their team members. So I think it's a really hard thing to do, but it is something that recruiters are going to become better at. And there are various kind of ways that I think you could do it beyond kind of writing the list. The other thing that I've seen done really well is recruiters are kind of all in their lanes, working incredibly hard. Putting in like a 30-minute meeting every Friday morning or Friday afternoon with the rest of the team, purely to share those lists and to kind of throw around ideas around what could we try and improve and make better, almost as a kind of a change like committee, is a really neat way of kind of boxing it, making it feel like it's worth having the blinkers on throughout the week. and then coming up with a way of kind of divvying out those very narrow parts of the process, depending on what people love. Because as we said before, some people love the idea of upskilling managers. Some people love the idea of tinkering with tech. Some people like visualizing process. You might not spot that the themed problem that you'd love to solve, but someone else might. So I think trying to increase the visibility of all of these tiny problems, share them out, kick off projects, that's how recruiters, I think, could be better at improving efficiency.
Nice. One thing you said there about might be outside of, I guess, your metrics and what you're judged on, right? We did a course with Ben Mills, who is talent leader at Disney and various other companies. And one thing he said he always does with his team is like share what he's judged on as well. And so they have visibility of that. And I'm thinking if you're in that scenario where it's not something you're judged on, it's very likely your manager has got some kind of metrics on making the talent acquisition team more efficient, right? So even if it's not your direct metric, your manager's judged on it. So if you can provide some value there, that's likely to be good for you and your team. So maybe even just figuring out not just what are your metrics, like what's the team judged on could be an interesting start.
Yeah. And having that dialogue with either your team lead or your regional leader or your global leader, very quickly you realize that the one thing that those people would want is those eyes that are walking down the process path every day and have that unique opportunity to spot the connections. And you'll find that, TA leaders very quickly will kind of assign time and effort into kind of resolving what it is that often is kind of like ruining your day as a recruiter. There's always these things that you find kind of silly or that you think could be very easily changed and improved. But there is so often that disconnect between realizing that actually in a few days you could solve that problem for the entire team across the entire company. So yeah, I actually really miss those days where you were kind of had the opportunity to be more strategic in kind of how the hiring process unfolds.
Let's talk about skills then. And I've got two parts to this question. So first is, what new skills are you seeing as opportunities for recruiters to start developing now? And what existing skills would you be doubling down on if you're an IC?
So I might be kind of parroting what many people are saying at the moment, but skills such as AI, governance, compliance, ethicists, bias, and this is kind of the jobs that will be attached to a variety of new skills. But there is going to be this kind of boom in a focus on compliance. So I think that's a huge area, and I don't think that people are coming out of university with that they're kind of ready-made to take on those roles. So I do think that domain experts working in talent acquisition are going to be really well placed to step into the role that is called, kind of bias auditing or AI kind of governance checking. I think having a deep understanding of hiring and then learning how to think about governance frameworks and compliance metrics, that would be one whole kind of school of thought that I would be thinking about. The other area skills-wise is, whilst I think the hiring funnel is kind of contracting and becoming quicker and will become more tech-enabled, the planning side of things, the pre-funnel, like the pre-hiring funnel side of things, so demand planning, triaging kind of whether a problem needs a permanent employee, an FTC, a gig economy worker, internal talent, market research, skills gap analysis, engagement, attraction, social media, like all of that really pre-funnel activity and then kind of skill sets, I think is going to, again, explode. And I think recruiters have a really great opportunity to become the people that take those new seats. So there is a mature kind of strategic workforce planning, demand planning, forecasting, all of this exists, but there is not enough supply for what I think the demand's going to be. And there are going to be people that are sat in HR teams, talent teams, and talent acquisition teams that will all converge into those new areas. So if I was in talent acquisition, the skills that I would be focusing on are those pre-hiring process skill sets, because I see them all coming together.
Would there be any parts of the role right now which you would really double down on, like be it the data piece, the stakeholder management piece? What areas are you thinking won't change in the next few years?
Yes, so I think there'll be a few areas that are going to go absolutely nowhere anytime soon. And I think it would be extremely valuable to try and again become the person that people think of when they think of these skills. So you mentioned talent, data analytics. So yes, that is one, but that is quite a technical one. And I think one that can feel quite intimidating to recruiters. The other ones that I think are going to be really interesting are stakeholder and candidate relationship management and support and communication. I think, whilst the funnel and the hiring process is going to change, there is going to be these moments that matter where candidates are going to be able to, request a conversation with a recruiter, or you're going to deploy a moment with that candidate. So being known as having exceptional internal stakeholder skills, but also in the kind of NPS feedback scores you get from the candidates that you hire and also don't hire, that would be one focus area. The other one I think is the talent attraction, engagement, social media, comms writing. I don't think the war for talent pre kind of funnel is going to go anywhere. I think it's going to get more and more competitive, and companies are going to become more and more creative and more ambitious with how they go about converting people that are looking at a company into applying for jobs there. And you're already seeing this with how they will leverage their C-suite LinkedIn kind of profiles. And so I think there's going to be a really cool new kind of art form of leveraging internal senior stakeholders and coming up with inventive campaigns. And so I'd definitely be focusing on the creative side of things. And then finally, and this is a bit of a gray one, and it kind of ties back actually to what we've been talking about on spotting efficiencies, but it's creative problem solving. I think recruiters have and always will be natural creative problem solvers. And the best recruiters that I think of are the ones that come with solutions to problems as opposed to coming with just the problem and kind of wanting to discuss them. So looking at the topic of how could we be improving efficiencies across people, tech, and process, coming up with creative new ways of going about changing that, that would be another kind of skill area that I would be tripling down on.
I want to finish on something you said in the prep call, which effectively the question is, have I missed the boat? And, for me, sometimes I'm sat at my desk thinking I should have just become a machine learning engineer at university. I would have been so much better placed right now. But for any recruiters sat in their role, like seeing all these things changing quickly, do you think it's too late, or how can we reassure them that actually there's still plenty of time to get ready?
So I put myself in this camp. Like I'm the same as you. I'm kind of being pummeled by the news of AI, and you see the use cases and the examples of companies that are really pushing the boundaries. But the answer is absolutely not. I'm always staggered by how little a lot of people know about AI, and also how little you need to know about AI to get involved. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give anybody that's maybe just trying to not think about it too much and is a bit overwhelmed by it, go and just transact, and you'll quickly realize that it is a non-technical piece of technology. It's been designed so that non-technical lay people like me and you can go and type in a very natural way. It's not coding, it's conversational. So creating an agent in Gemini or in ChatGPT is the first hurdle. And then I think you very quickly realize that you can participate in this, and it's not as intimidating as it feels if you don't kind of cross that boundary. So no, I think it is extremely early still, and it's exciting.
I think that's a good point to end. Dave, thanks for joining.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.